In this story, we're going to follow a real and shocking incident that shows how a single mistake can turn several people's lives upside down. In this case, there's a conflict between the physical evidence and the defendant's statements. It clearly shows how family disputes and unhealthy jealousy can lead to violent and irreversible actions. Ivan Jesus Ortega Caventaruz. He was born on May 19, 1995, in a small community called Pergamino in the province of Bonicias, the capital of Argentina. Ivan grew up in their home alongside his parents, Juan and Nancy. Besides Ivan, his parents had 5 other children named Bruno, Lucia, Franco, Martina, and Delfina. Members of this family described Ivan as a cheerful, energetic, and sociable young man. They said he was fun-loving, with a gentle but resilient personality. Ivan's biggest dream was to become a professional soccer player. He seemed to have a natural talent for the sport. His skills were always admired by his friends and relatives, and his teammates at the local football club always praised him as well. On May 30th, 2011, He started a romantic relationship with his girlfriend named Tamra. Ivan and Tamra had known each other for about 2 years, and at first their relationship was completely friendly. Over time, their relationship turned into a romantic one. These 2 young people exchanged sweet messages and photos every day. They did this regularly. In those letters, they would express their love and affection for each other. Tamara was 2 years older than 16-year-old Ivan. She lived with her father, Fabian. Tamara's mother had separated from her father and lived in Los Angeles. Tamara's father had several jobs. During the day, he worked as a tiler, and at night, he worked as a security guard at a car wash and a nightclub. These jobs required physical fitness and strength, both of which Fabian had. He often had to intervene in fights and handle critical situations that would arise on the club premises. To calm things down, Fabian didn't approve of his daughter's relationship with Ivan. He even threatened him several times and demanded that he break up with his daughter. But despite that, one day Fabian caught Ivan off guard at his own house. Not only was Ivan not in the living room, but he was in the bedroom in Tamara's arms. This scene made Fabian so angry that he immediately threw Ivan out of the house, and he told him not to show up around there anymore. Still, the 2 young people kept seeing each other, and sometimes they would meet at Tamara's mother's house, which was actually in Los Angeles and was empty. They would spend time together there. Tamara herself had a very good relationship with Ivan's parents as well as his sister and brother. Unlike Tamara's father, none of them had any problem with the 2 being in a relationship. They didn't mind at all. Fabian was so unhappy with the situation that he tried to talk to Ivan's father. This conversation took place on January 6, 2012, and it didn't go very well. Fabian went to a bar where Juan Domingo worked. There, when he saw Ivan's father, he warned him that if Ivan and Tamara continued their relationship, things would end badly for Ivan. When Juan asked Tamara's father why he was so against their friendship, Fabian replied that his daughter was having trouble with her studies and discipline because of all the time she was spending with Ivan. She was having serious problems. After this rather unpleasant conversation, he repeated his warning several times, pointing his finger for emphasis. And before he left, he made his threat even clearer. He told Juan, "If I see Ivan in my house just one more time, just once, I'll personally throw him out the window." That same night, like every Thursday, he was supposed to work at the car wash. That evening, he left the house with the intention of coming back a bit earlier than usual. During that time, his daughter was at home with her relatives. After Fabian left, Tamara quickly messaged Ivan to come over. The 2 of them knew they had to keep an eye on the time, because Ivan had to leave the house before Fabian got back. But that night, sleep caught them off guard, and they ended up sleeping until morning. So much so that they were confronted by Tamara's father's angry shouts when he caught them together again, and he saw them in each other's arms. Without a moment's hesitation, Fabian dragged Ivan out of bed and started beating him. Tamara tried to stop the fight and begged her father to stop hitting him, but it didn't seem like he was listening to his daughter at all. Tamara's cousin and her mother were in another room that night. When they heard the commotion, they quickly ran to the room where the beating was happening and tried to calm Fabian down. When Tamara's cousin realized that Fabian had completely lost control, she quickly called her brother and her aunt. That is, Tamara's mother, who had come there from Los Angeles for a while, called them to come over. The presence of Fabian's ex-wife not only didn't calm him down, but actually made him even angrier. He stopped attacking Ivan and now turned on Tamara's aunt and his wife Maria. First, he slapped Tamara's aunt in the face and then landed a hard punch on Maria's chest. These altercations went on for about an hour and a half. After a while, Fabian stopped beating them and switched to another kind of violence. He started cursing Ivan as much as he could and demanded that Ivan jump out the window himself, or else Fabian would do it for him. Poor Ivan, who was completely exhausted and had already taken a beating, was desperately begging Fabian not to throw him out the window. But apparently, Fabian was still determined to go through with it. Ivan was too weak to resist anymore. Fabian took advantage of this and landed a few more focused blows on him. These blows caused fractures to his nasal wall and jaw. With these brutal hits, Ivan immediately lost consciousness. Fabian, seizing the moment, shoved Ivan's limp body against the window and smashed the glass with his head. After that blow, Ivan's lifeless body fell to the ground. Fabian lifted his body again, put one hand around his throat, grabbed his legs with the other, and threw him out the window. At that moment, Ivan was still unconscious during the fall. He made no sound and didn't try to react with any movement of his hands or feet. The fall almost immediately resulted in Ivan's death. This tragic event happened at around 9:30 in the morning. Right after the incident, the police arrived at the scene, and a few minutes later, the ambulance that had been called by the officers arrived. The doctors immediately pronounced Ivan dead. On the other side, Tamara was quickly running down the stairs. She had twisted her foot and had fallen down a few steps, so she was also examined. Tamara kept repeating, "He jumped out the window." Meanwhile, the police also went up to the apartment on the 7th floor. Fabian was still there too, chain-smoking cigarettes one after another, and was visibly excited. He greeted the police officers and showed them the room and the window that apparently Ivan had jumped out of. During the investigation of the scene, several pieces of broken glass were found. While the police officers were inspecting the apartment, Fabian was talking with his ex-wife and other relatives who had witnessed the incident. During the conversations between the police and Fabian's family, he kept insisting that everything was Ivan's fault and that he had jumped out of the window himself during the altercation. Before the police officers could search the apartment, Fabian recounted the story of the altercation between himself and Ivan to them. Fabian said he had found Ivan holding his daughter. According to him, Ivan had decided to escape through the window out of fear. Tamara's uncle tried to back up Fabian's story and said that Ivan intended to go down from the 7th floor, but he couldn't hold on and eventually fell. Sometime after the police left, Tamara left her house and went to Ivan's place. There she encountered Ivan's 14-year-old sister, Lucia, who turned pale after hearing what had happened. She couldn't believe what had happened. Then, screaming and shouting, she ran to her family and told them the whole story. Bruno, Ivan's older brother, was the first one to arrive at the scene of the accident. After hearing the news, he ran to the scene barefoot. Ivan's father, Juan, also rushed there by car. The rest of the family were also in shock at home and couldn't believe this terrible thing that had happened to Ivan. They just couldn't imagine it. That very night, the police arrested Fabian. He was accused of assaulting and beating Ivan. However, he was only held in police custody for a few hours and was released after a brief interrogation. But a few days later, immediately after the initial autopsy, the prosecutor issued an arrest warrant for Fabian. This time he was arrested on charges of involuntary manslaughter, because by then it had become clear that Ivan was unconscious at the time of the fall. Around this time, Tamra was admitted to a psychiatric clinic for a few days, where she received the necessary support and help. After this period, she was finally able to leave the clinic and her condition improved. But what's interesting is that about a week or two later, she met her new boyfriend. After the autopsy, Ivan's body was handed over to the family. He was buried around 4 in the afternoon in their hometown cemetery. During the mourning ceremony, Ivan's father, Juan Domingo, needed medical assistance. He was feeling unwell and became nauseous because of the situation. This was an extremely difficult and heartbreaking time for all of Ivan's family members, as they still couldn't come to terms with his death. Nevertheless, those who were present showed love, care, and respect for Ivan and his family. They expressed their condolences. At the end of the ceremony, several black balloons were released into the sky as a farewell and in memory of him. Meanwhile, the investigation into Ivan's death was still ongoing. The police examined several theories about what happened that day. According to the first theory, Ivan wanted to escape from his girlfriend's father and he exited the apartment through the window. But for various reasons, he fell. The second theory says that Fabian, during an argument, deliberately pushed Ivan out the window. Ivan's family believed the second theory more, because they had seen and witnessed Fabian chasing their son every time and threatening to kill him each time. In fact, his mother had even said that if she saw him there one more time, she would throw him out the window herself. 2 years after Ivan's death, on February 26, 2014, a trial was held in which Fabian's guilt was proven. Fabian had been in custody the entire time. Before we continue with the story, please support us by liking and subscribing. Thank you so much. One of the most important pieces of evidence was the testimony of witnesses who lived in the apartment above the scene of the incident. They said that on that day, the sounds of commotion and fighting could be heard through the building's walls. They also said that they clearly heard Tamra's voice, asking her father to stop hitting Ivan, not to beat him anymore. And they also heard Ivan himself begging Fabian to have mercy on him. The neighbors, they also heard that Fabian had told Ivan to jump out of the window himself, outside, and even another neighbor. She was actually on her balcony and clearly saw Fabian throw the victim out the window. She said that only after that did Fabian stick his head out to see if Ivan had hit the ground or not. This lady who was on the balcony thought that Ivan was unconscious for a few moments during the fall, because he didn't even try to pull himself up or protect his head during the fall. She also claimed that she was constantly being threatened by Fabian's relatives. The courage of this lady standing up to Fabian's family is truly admirable. Then, the testimonies of 5 members of that same family who were present at the scene were presented, all of them. They testify that Ivan jumped out the window to avoid a confrontation with Fabian. Tamara's mother also stated that at the time of Ivan's fall, she was in the kitchen because she had just argued with her ex-husband. But at the same time, she claimed that she saw Ivan willingly jump out the window, as if he was trying to jump into a pool outside. However, it's unclear how that woman could have seen the scene from the kitchen. Since the kitchen didn't have a view of that window, these contradictions cast doubt on the credibility of the other testimonies as well. Based on the statements of the defendant's relatives, it wasn't clear why Ivan would do such a thing, or whether it had anything to do with Fabian's anger at all. Still, it was obvious to everyone in court that they were trying to justify everything. The prosecutor and the plaintiff's lawyers clearly stated that Ivan was a well-balanced young man. He had never had any conflicts with anyone, wasn't depressed, and had never tried to harm himself. Ivan's relatives also confirmed the claims that he was regularly harassed and abused by the defendant, and that he had even been threatened with death. It was even revealed during the trial that Fabian had gone to Ivan's father several times and threatened him as well. The psychologists involved in the case described Fabian as someone with a rigid personality, someone who can't control his anger. That was their diagnosis. In their opinion, this lack of anger management could have led to aggressive behavior toward Ivan. Additionally, the experts found an unhealthy dependency between Fabian and his daughter when analyzing his personality. Fabian showed signs of possessive jealousy toward his daughter. Authorities launched a new investigation against him to determine whether he had sexually assaulted his daughter. Unfortunately, the results of this investigation were never made public. During the trial, the autopsy results showed that Ivan's face had suffered fractures to the jaw and nose. These injuries were likely caused by hard, deliberate blows to those areas. People who suffer such injuries often lose consciousness. In addition, it was determined that the type of injuries make it impossible for them to have been caused by the victim hitting the ground. It rules that out, because if that were the case, the injuries would have been more severe. All of this indicated that Ivan was unconscious at the time of the fall. And he couldn't escape from that apartment through the window. This explains why his hands showed no signs of trying to break his fall. Forensic examinations also showed that the victim died almost instantly, and the cause was respiratory arrest, which was caused by multiple injuries. The specialists who performed the autopsy realized that most of these injuries occurred on the back of the balcony. For example, the back of the skull or the vertebrae, and other injuries related to the severe impact of the back of the balcony with the ground. In addition, the expert ruled out the possibility that the deceased had jumped out of the broken window himself, because the tips of his fingers showed no contact with broken glass or any cuts. And finally, in the last part of his statement, the expert said he had the chance to examine Fabian and noticed that his wrist was injured. This injury probably happened when he struck the balcony. The forensic medical examiner also presented to the court that toxicology tests showed no trace of drugs or alcohol in Ivan's blood. In other words, all the evidence indicated that Ivan did not jump out of the window of his own free will. The distance between the young man's body and the wall of the house showed that the fall happened at an unnatural angle, indicating a deliberate push. Next, it was the defendant's turn to testify. Fabian repeated his previous statements and claimed that Ivan had jumped out of the window on his own accord. He also insisted that there had only been a verbal argument between him and Ivan, and nothing else. He claimed that no physical violence had occurred on his part against Ivan. Fabian continued to claim that throughout the entire altercation in the apartment, he had remained conscious and hadn't lost awareness for even a moment. He also insisted that his daughter had told him about Ivan's psychological problems, which were caused by repeated conflicts at their home. But finally, on March 14th, 2014, at 10 a.m., the initial verdict was announced. At the beginning of the trial, it became clear that Fabian had not intended to kill Ivan from the start. But why did he change his mind later? Because the altercation lasted for an hour and a half. According to the judge, what happened caused the defendant to lose control. First, he assaulted Ivan, and then, when he saw that Ivan had lost consciousness, he decided to throw him out the window. Based on these findings, Fabian was found guilty of the aggravated murder of a minor and sentenced to life imprisonment. The court also ordered him to pay compensation to Ivan's family, which included blood money and court costs. In November 2016, the Supreme Court finalized the case and upheld Fabian's previous life sentence, and it also preemptively ruled out any possibility of an appeal. Ivan's family was very happy with the court's decision, but they would never be the same as before. They hadn't forgotten Ivan and often remembered him, whether on social media or in their daily lives. They all had something official about him on their bodies. They tattooed Ivan's name. This is the end of this tragic case. Today, from this corner of the world, be sure to write your thoughts for me in the comments. Also, just by liking and subscribing in a few seconds, you give me the motivation to keep improving and making more content. Thanks for following the case. You guys are awesome.